Okay, good evening, folks. It is the appointed time. Actually, my computer says it's 6:01, so it's actually past the appointed time. It is Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. We're in the council chambers of the city of Platteville, and I am calling our regularly scheduled meeting to order. Candace will start with roll call.
Kathy Cobb is excused. Jason Arts.
Here.
Lynn Parrott.
Here.
Todd Casper.
Here.
Bob Gates.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here. And the first item on our agenda is the swearing in of a new police officer. And so we'll invite Candace to the podium, and I'm sure she will invite the candidate to come forward, or the new hire.
You want to speak first? Okay. All right, we'll have to get kind of close so that it catches both of our voices. But basically, you're just going to raise your right hand and you're going to repeat after me. So go ahead and raise your right hand. I state your full name.
I, Brendan J. Overby,
Having been appointed to the office of police officer,
having been appointed to the office of police officer,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Brendan, we always give our new officers a chance to introduce themselves and say anything they'd like to say. So
Okay. I'm Brendan Overby. I grew up in McHenry, Illinois. Those are my parents over there. Pretty young, as all the officers like to say. I was born in 2000, graduated in 2019, graduated high school. I went to University of Wisconsin, Platteville, so I've lived in the town for about 4 years now, and I've really grown to love the community. Got hired on at the police department right after college and went to the academy up in Sparta, Wisconsin for the last 4.5 months. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and help serve the community.
and we're excited to have you. I understand that some of your background allows you to know all about the streets in our city.
Yeah, I've worked at Faraday for 2 years, so know the city quite well right by now.
All right, well, good. We're happy to have you, and Mom and Dad, thanks for coming. So
Thank you.
again, welcome, Brendan. All right. The next item on our agenda is the consideration of the consent agenda. These items may be approved on a single motion and vote. I have council minutes, I have payment of bills, I have financial reports, appointments to boards and committees, which I left on my desk, so we won't have those tonight. Licenses and the cancellation of the December 26th, which would be the second regular meeting of the Common Council in December.
I have a motion.
Okay,
I move to approve all items listed under the consent calendar.
Seconded.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar as presented. Candace will vote.
Arts.
Yes.
Parrott.
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Gates.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. I think Councilman Parrott has a congratulatory message she wants to send out.
Oh, I definitely do. Again, I am so proud of the Hillman football team, Platteville's high school's football team. And I believe now they are, I forget what they call them, but they are going on to finals or however that goes. But they won their game, their home game here last week, and they're going on this Friday. So cheers to them. We also doing really good with the cross country. They won sectionals. So they're really doing good. The kids are really making us proud, and I'm excited about that.
Anybody else that has anything they want to say? I will say that I attended the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Conference in Green Bay last week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I learned some things. I also found out that many of these communities struggle with the same things we do. Budget, hiring, housing. These are all things that were common themes throughout the conference. So I did learn about Chat GPT a little. So now I'll be talking to Clint about that because the saying was Chat GPT won't replace people, but people who use Chat GPT will replace people who don't. So very interesting. So we'll be talking about that, I guess, in the next weeks, and some social media stuff. That was also a big portion of the conference. So, all right, we'll move on now to reports. There were 3 in your packet. The Tourism Committee report. Jason, anything more?
Nothing to add,
The Safe Routes Committee, Jason,
nothing to add. To that.
and Water and Sewer.
No additions on my part.
No additions on mine. Good to have the budget passed. All right. Action items on our agenda tonight. The first action item is resolution 23-31, authorizing the city manager to submit applications to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the 2024 to 2028 TAP program, Transportation Alternative Program. So Howard.
Yes, thank you. In the last cycle, we received a grant award for phase 1 for the Roundtree Branch Trail near the bridge behind Jane and Stone, continuing north to Mitchell Hollow Road. Phase 2 and phase 3 are being requested now for phase 2 to be constructed in 2026, phase 3 in 2028. Phase 2 would go from Mitchell Hollow up to Broadway, County B, and phase 3 would go from County B to Fairfield Drive, just north of the high school. We have DOT will allow both phases to be included in a single resolution, and our intent is to align with DNR grant cycles so that we can better compete for both grants and limit the amount of funding needed by the city. Last time we had some questions regarding whether or not what the difference is between lighting and no lighting. So what I have is I have 2 options for your consideration. Phase 2 would have over $570,000 total project. Phase 3 would be over $1 million project in 2028. The respective city portions of the cost, which is half of the design costs only. And so for option 1, phase 2 cost would be about $30,000, phase 3 about $50,000. If we remove the lighting, it significantly cuts back the total dollar amount of the project, but it does not impact the total to the city all that much. Like I said, it would just reduce the amount of design costs for including the lighting. So phase 2 would go from $30,000 to $25,000. Phase 3 would go from $50,000 to $40,000. I need to clarify that there isn't actually a point value in the DOT for lighting. However, it does talk about how you get more points in general. They just have a block that describes how the rubric is scored, and it's a percentage of the scoring. And as one of the criteria as part of this, it talks about being more utilitarian. So to me, if you can use it during, say, a warm evening like tonight, to me, it would be more utilitarian if it was lighted instead of if it was not. that would be up to the people doing the scoring in DOT. Under the DNR, which is the separate grant that we'll have to do at a different time, there is a 1 point addition if you get solar lighting for the thing, but that's about it. So going back to what we have is staff recommends that we go with the lighted trail, which would be option 1. But if the council so desires to have the trail sections without the lighting, we do have the option 2.
Okay, questions?
Question and a comment.
Bob?
I mean, thank you for exploring option 2 without lighting. And I agree that it wouldn't make sense to go without lights just to save 5,000 or 10,000 as it would be. But I'm a little confused on the fact that I mean, this is a motion to submit the application. And what happened earlier that was the good news? Because I'm a member of PCA and I was kind of under the impression that we were really close to getting it or had gotten this.
We have the grants for phase 1, and that will be worked on this spring and summer coming
Okay.
up
24.
in 2024. And what this is to request the next phases for 26 and 28.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
and this is simply the DOT funding.
Correct.
We would also have to submit grant applications for the DNR funding.
Correct.
And our understanding would be if we don't get both, we probably don't do it.
Correct.
Right. Because I think we're of the opinion we wouldn't want to obligate the city for more than, so it would be both the TAP grant, transportation alternative through DOT, and then the DNR grant. In an earlier year, we got DNR, but we didn't get DOT.
Correct.
And then we turned that down.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions?
I think I read it, but so I see that there's gonna be, or there's possibly an additional $1,000 that will come out every year for maintenance, which is not bad, but would that just be included in some general fund, or we would take that over $1,000? Or is that include, how's that work?
Yes, what we're saying is that right now, the cost of lighting and maintenance of the over 135 lights that are out there right now is it's about $1,000, and it's in the general fund budget right now. So I'm talking about 15 to 17 lights. So even if we did it as wired instead of solar lights, I'm estimating about $125 a year on top of that current
Yes.
$1,000.
Okay, that's not bad. Okay.
And if you're able to do solar, then it's just
There's,
replacement or whatever.
yes, there's the installation cost as part of the project, but then every 15 to 20 years, you have to replace the batteries.
Question, Howard, has there been any consideration of perhaps snow plowing a section of the trail, let's say from the old blood plant area to perhaps Menards in the winter for a winter walking area?
As far as I know, the PCA has requested that be used for winter activities like snowshoes and cross-country skiing. So I would recommend that you speak with somebody with the PCA and have them come back to us. The intent was never to plow any of that PCA trail to reduce maintenance costs for the city or for volunteers to go out there and try to do that. But that can certainly change if that's what the community wants.
Yeah, I think that we should, I believe PCA now has a trail counter. And it would be interesting to know if there are, Todd, I hear what you're saying, because if there are actually people who are using that trail as a mode of transportation to get to work, not for recreation. I mean, that's what a TAP program is supposed to be, transportation alternative. It's not supposed to be recreational. I do know that, Bob, we do plow the walking trail at Mountain View Park, right? And we plow the trail around Smith Park, I think. So we do have two recreational trails that are plowed.
My own experience out there in the winter is that eventually there is so much walking out there that it turns into an
Ice.
icy,
Yeah.
kind of a very difficult area to walk or safe area to walk. So that's why I was always wondering if we couldn't get a plow through, but if that's why they did not want to do that, I guess I understand now. Very hazardous.
Yeah.
I don't know if many people actually cross-country ski on it.
See many tracks out there.
So somebody might, Bob, maybe you wanna, yeah, bring that up. to him. Okay. All right, well, we have this tonight, which is a recommendation from staff to authorize the submission of TAP grants. And these would be for the 26 and 28 cycles, so this is far in advance. So we aren't talking about additional money right now, and we aren't talking about additional money at all if we don't get the DNR grant. So I tend to agree with Bob that the different, if the difference that we're facing is $5,000, it's might as well have it lit. So does somebody have a motion they want to offer?
I'll go with the motion if you're prepared. I move to approve resolution 23-31, authorizing the city manager of the city of Platteville to submit applications to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the 2024 to 2028 Transportation Alternatives Program for option 1 with lighting, and with the understanding that if we don't receive both grants, that we would opt out of the situation.
Second.
Okay, Candace, we have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2331 with option 1. We'll vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is resolution 23-32, determination of necessity, property condemnation. Clint.
This evening, in conjunction with our city attorney, we're presenting the resolution on determination of necessity regarding the condemnation of 2 city properties. The properties in discussion are the parcels 271-01295-0000 and 271-01296-0000, located at the intersections of North Chestnut Adams Street for the purpose of building a new fire facility. The city of Platteville is authorized under Wisconsin State Statute Chapter 32 to condemn property. As part of this procedure, the city must adopt a resolution determining the necessity for condemnation, seek a property appraisal, and negotiate with the landowner prior to a condemnation process. The resolution that you have attached with this has a slight amendment to what you would have seen in the last meeting. We've added in the property description under Exhibit A, an added paragraph that defines that half of the remaining portion of Chestnut Street that was abandoned with the school project, that the half that would have been then property of the adjacent property owner is also on the condemnation list. So it's the 2 parcels plus that defined half of Chestnut Street that was abandoned. The sample affirmative motion language tonight would be motion to adopt resolution 2332, determining the necessity to condemn the 2 parcels previously described and the adjacent abandoned alleyway for the purposes of building a new fire facility. Madam President.
Okay, questions of Clint? Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to adopt resolution 23-32, determining the necessity to condemn parcels 271-01295-0000 and 271-01296-0000 and the adjacent abandoned alleyway for the purpose of building a new fire facility.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 23-32. We'll vote.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that's the end of our action items for tonight. We will now go to the information and discussion section. The first of which is the ordinance amending parking on South Elm Street on the west end of the Platteville Public Library. Howard.
Okay, thank you. The Holiday Inn Express has expressed a concern that their customers need additional overnight parking and has suggested converting the 5 parking stalls on the west end of the public library to allow for overnight parking for hotel guests. Many guests are construction workers with large trucks that do not easily fit into their underground parking lot. Management is concerned that forcing guests may increase damage to vehicles in the building. Currently, those 5 stalls are partially on the city right-of-way of South Elm Street, just south of Main Street at the west end of the library. I have a street view photo in the packet. The stalls are currently signed like the adjacent street. No parking 3 to 6 a.m. and 3-hour parking 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. The management has requested that the area be signed as hotel and library parking only and 3-hour parking during the day. For information, the Holiday Inn Express has 72 rooms. There are 55 underground spaces that are available to guests and staff of the hotel, library, and clinic. There are 34 surface parking spaces plus the 5 spaces at the end, and those are shared between the hotel, library, and the Neighborhood Health Partners Clinic. There's currently 89 spaces now and up to 94 if the request is granted. Currently, the library pays 50% of snow removal for the surface parking to include those 5 stalls. There would be no change to that arrangement. Looking at some pros and cons to this, some pros, it would help the Holiday Inn Express provide overnight parking for guests. It assists the local business. If they're booked to near capacity, then it must mean that they need the additional parking, which is good for the city. It does keep the 3-hour parking during the day to help accommodate the library. Some of the cons would be it does set a precedent by designating partial on-street parking for a particular business. We feel that it would increase the workload of the police department to enforce parking limitations for hotel and library parking. We feel that renters nearby may try to park overnight until they're ticketed. Cost of the new signs we're recommending should be paid by the Holiday Inn Express, about $50. We have an ordinance that would change that to go with what the Holiday Inn Express has requested. The police chief and the library director are here in case you have specific questions about their operations or any of the other things on that regard.
Okay, questions. I do. This isn't on-street parking. I mean, it says it sets a precedent by designating partial on-street parking.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not really on-street parking. It's a parking lot.
Right.
the reason why I say that is because part of that lot is within the Elm Street right of way. So it depends on how you categorize it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, well, you couldn't park in line with the street. You have to park, you have to pull in. You can't park in line with the street.
Correct.
Right.
perpendicular, yes.
So I also have a question. Is there no way that the hotel could give give a little tag that somebody would put in their car if I mean, to help the police? I mean, it seems to me like there's all kinds of tags that someone could use, and then the police aren't forced to go at night and see if they have a hotel parking tag. I mean, if they don't have a hotel parking tag, then that's,
With the changes to it, it would be kind of enforced by the library to be queuing in law enforcement to say if they had concerns that there was a vehicle there that was not a hotel guest. Am I correct there, chief?
Correct.
yeah, but I mean, my understanding is that this is basically for overnight parking.
It would make those 5 stalls mirror what's happening in the large lot that we share with the
Right.
library. It would
Right.
be consistent with what's going there. Minus I don't think we have a 3-hour limit though on the large parking lot that we monitor for.
We do not.
But I mean, my understanding is that the real need is for overnight parking. And the library would be, I mean, Jesse, I don't expect you to be policing that lot in the middle of the night. So I mean, the whole issue of an overnight parking in that lot would seem like the hotel could give the customer some tag or something so that it's not someone who's just pulled in random.
We certainly can make that suggestions to management over there to help queue.
Like them to be part of the solution. Any other question? No. Okay, then we'll bring that forward on the agenda for our November 13th. Maybe that's the date. I don't know. Our first meeting in November. Okay, the next information and discussion item is the resolution to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, WPPA. Clint.
Thank you, Madam President. City of Platteville, City Manager, Chief Police, and Police Lieutenants, and our Human Resources Manager have negotiated the attached contract changes with Wisconsin Professional Police Association for the years of 2024 through 2026. As we have in past negotiation sessions, we considered many factors, including comparable communities and their salary structure, what the city has been able to offer non-union employees, administrative control changes, as well as a thorough review of the existing language. The major changes that we're going to see here tonight are wage schedule changes and a cost of living adjustment amount to an estimate of about 7.5% increase, incorporating a side letter amendment on vacation from the previous contract to match what we're doing to the general employees, adjusting residency requirements from a 15-mile radius to 25-mile radius, and eliminating the city's liability with legacy language that allows for participation in a health insurance plan post-termination and retirement. The additional expenses created in this agreement in 2024 will be funded through additional supplemental aid provided through the state shared revenues. We'll kind of go through it, but as a bottom line, looking at an estimated $78,500 increase to the 2024 budget in wages and fringe. If I can have you open to the second page of that document, the first page of the tentative agreements, kind of walking you through each agreement and the point and position of each one. The first one, we have dues deduction. We're just adding some language in there that you'll see, or other protected class. This is to recognize different protected classes in state and federal law. And the second one, Article 4, we're adding, we're striking the need for 5 arbitrators and just putting it to a panel of arbitrators because WERC does not currently have 5 arbitrators. They've had significant reductions at a state level, so trying to get 2 right now would be our goal. Item number 3, Article 4, switching some legacy language we had on there that changes to the grievance procedure would be submitted to committee chairperson. We're changing that to local union president to match current practice. Item number 4, Article 5, we have some discipline and suspension language changes. There is some legacy language in there too that would say it is agreed that the debrief sheets will be used in an annual evaluation and then removed from the employee's personnel records. Discontinued this practice and would like to then strike the language from it. Article number 6, item 5. We also have some discontinuing of that practice. So we're striking the language where a conflict occurs because of the identical service dates of appointment, the member with the highest score, et cetera, and just having it to the senior officer in charge by aggregated time and service. Item number 6, now we're talking about wages. So this would be the increases projected for 2024, 2025, and 2026 of a 5%, 4%, and 3%, the second 2 years with a Me Too clause in the event that the city were to go higher with the general employees. You'll see then in article number 7 for the wages, it shows the current chart of what the wage salary schedule looks like by years and services, and then has what is the proposed new chart for 2024, 2025, and 2026. You'll see then reflected a 5%, 4%, and 3% change to that. How we arrive at a 7.5% though is you have to visualize that there's 2 other adjustments to this wage schedule. The first one being that essentially the first year has been stricken. So the new 1 on the bottom is now 2. And then there's also compression of years. We're going from a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, 10 year, 15 into a 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, which means some of the salary changes are experienced earlier in the career progression. So that was a lot, but does everybody kind of see what's going on there? Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, Article 7, wages. We're striking some language there from when it comes to OIC and training, striking it from our academically qualified to participate in the promotional process, striking that to have at least 3 years experience with Platteville Police. Item number 9, Article 8. Striking the language of 8 hours and just having the normal patrol work schedule. Our work schedules for our officers now are not at 8 hours. I believe detectives are at 8 hours, but our officers are on a 8 and change, if memory serves. And then that also carries then for item number 10, Article 8, again, putting it to their normal scheduled work day and not to an 8-hour shift of which only detectives that applies to right now. Item number 11, Article 8, we have a current practice. We've kind of changed this to the exchange for hours. You don't have to be within the same classification. Essentially, employees may trade days off upon agreement with 24-hour notice. Item number 12, Article 8, we have hours of employment. This was kind of more clarification here, but it also establishes kind of a budget control. We want to recognize that with sending folks off to approved training that there's added expectations and hours, but we're trying to balance that within in the same within a period to be able to use those hours as time off versus automatically having it go to time and a half pay. Item number 13, Article 8, kind of firms up some expectations. Essentially, flex time is treated the same as requests for sick and our times off. I'm sorry, for compensatory time. Item number 14, Article 9, vacations. This section reflects the changes that were added in 2022. In 2022, we changed language in the employee handbook, increasing some of the accrued hours. That was adopted as a side letter in 2022. This incorporates it into the collective bargaining agreement, and that carries over into page 4 of 6. Item number 15, Article 10, holidays. We're just firming up expectations on what a floating holiday is. Essentially, with the 2 floating holidays, it's a total of 32 hours is how we're defining it. Item number 16, Article number 9 with sick leave. We're putting in language that sick leave will be front loaded for employees' anniversary date, the rate of 96 hours annually. And this is kind of to help with situations where you may have a new officer. And what do we do if we have a brand new officer and they experience some type of a sick situation and they don't have an accumulated bank? So this kind of helps forward that amount. On the back page then, item number 17, Article number 11, sick leave. You're going to see some striking of some language there. The big one is that sub paragraph 2, the city will allow the employee to use any accumulated sick leave to purchase prepaid health insurance upon termination or retirement. Well, the city does not have a health insurance program that allows for participation post-employment or retirement. It's believed this is probably legacy language that carries over from when we were participating in the ETF insurance plan, because they do allow that in that plan. So striking this gets us out from quite a bit of liability in the event that an officer retiring or separating wanted to exercise this. Item number 18, article number 11, we added language: an employee who is absent on approved vacation leave or other scheduled time off may not retroactively change the time off to sick leave. This is kind of just a control measure on ensuring that if folks are setting vacation, that they're obligated to use it, even if they experience unplanned types of sick events. Item number 19, article 11 there, we're changing some pronouns from his's to theirs. Item number 20, article 13, leave of absence, changing this language to be consistent with the employee handbook to include then for funeral leave, the acknowledgement of step parents, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, stepbrother, stepsister. Item number 21, article number 14, uniform allowances, solidifying that it's $600 per year. This is what it was in 2023. The current contract that we're in right now, though, had an incremental changes of stepping it up until we hit 600 in 2023. So this is then keeping that 600 amount for the next year's with a continuation of the collective bargaining agreement. And then the final one, item number 23, article number 21 is residency requirements. This change allows for your officers and detectives to live within 25 miles versus 15 miles. This was seen beneficial to allow for a wider catch basin, perhaps, of folks that don't necessarily want to move where they're currently residing, and allow for more housing opportunities for folks that we're trying to attract here that are feeling the pressures of our current housing shortages. So with all that being said, bottom line is coming into this negotiations, I felt that both parties were very well prepared with their platforms. The platforms were well researched and some thought was put into it. And I think that both sides came forward with some reasonable expectations. I felt the exchange and how we arrived at closing on it was appropriate. I certainly didn't get everything that I wanted out of it, and neither did Jeff Spencer, the WPPA rep. So it felt like, we both agreed to kind of meet in the middle. It feels like we had some solid improvements overall on both sides. I think all the initiatives here both help WPPA and the employee cause, as well as the city, as we continue to provide services. So with that being said, I do not have a closed session scheduled tonight to go in any type of in-depth discussion on different items on it. I would say at this point, if there was again, in-depth things, or if you disagree with some of the things that are on here, that we would move forward with the closed session in the first meeting in November, and then solidify actions with the budget at the end of November, Madam President.
Okay, any questions of Clint? These are never easy. I'm pretty satisfied with, I don't see a need for closed session.
And I'd like to thank Representative Jeff Spencer, Nathan Oz, Jacob Brown, and Tony Vander Velden from the WPPA's part, and then Chief McKinley, Lieutenant Dressler, Lieutenant Grabent, and then HR Manager Wilson were the parties all involved with the negotiations.
Okay, this will move on to our action agenda for our first meeting in November. Is that correct?
Yes, if consensus is we're good to go. When we bring it back, it will be then in a finalized collective bargaining agreement format, not the tentative agreement notes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is 2024 salaries resolution, authorizing the salaries and rates of pay of employees for the year 2024. It says Nicola, but my understanding is Nicola is out ill or on family.
She's on a family
So is this
occasion.
going to be Chad or is this going to be you?
I will be pitching this tonight, Madam President. So what you're seeing here tonight is historically what we've used for salary resolution approval. It is updated with the overall pay increase of 7% with the new plan. It shows the minimum wage or it's also, it shows the minimum and the maximum of the pay brand. The proposed budget includes this increase of 7%, as well as the 7.5% we just talked about with the police officers. The budget impact on this is what was described. It is recommended that the staff consider this. If there is a motion that we bring it forward with the approval of the budget process, language is included on here. Again, this doesn't define the implementation process, though. What you're seeing here is the wage ranges. And it's still allowing then for policy with this of your city manager who's given authorization to make things work, to make it work within these types of ranges. I will say that as we talked about last meeting, kind of the implementation of migrating our employees from the current schedule to the new schedule looks like this. As we talked about, everyone will migrate on January 1st to the new schedule, and they'll slide to the step that generates an income. Individuals that do not experience at least a 3% increase on January 1st from making that transition to the new schedule on their anniversary date will move to a step that generates at least a 3% income. Now, the caveats beyond that then is there are tweaking for compressions for longevity situations. When we have situations where there's multiple employees in the same position and title, essentially, to try to recognize their years. We have some folks that are tenured here that some of the compression actually started back when we made the first adjustments. So we're trying to right the ship on that the best we can. It doesn't reflect all of our employees' longevity. Again, it's just reflecting the folks that there's multiple employees in the same job title that have differences in ranging years. And then finally, we're ensuring that folks receive more than they would have on the status quo plan. So by the end of 2024, everyone should be at a higher compensation level than had we stayed with the original plan and done a 3% increase cost of living to that plan. Other things I'll point out, you'll see on the bottom of page 2 of 2 that this excludes your library staff, your city manager, part-time and temporary seasonal employees. The library board officially has the capacity to set what they want for wages. They are kind of tagged onto our schedule, though, and went through the Carlson-Detman process, but it would not be the authority of you folks to kind of approve that. That would be the library board. Your city manager agreement, of course, is arrived at through a contract work agreement, and then your temporary and seasonal employees, again, are kind of managed down through administrative ranks. And again, this is seen then in conjunction with the budget as an adoption date of the 28th day of November, Madam President.
Okay, questions? This would be the wage rates as created through our current compensation study,
That is correct.
and which is an update to our study from 2017. All employees would have a minimum raise of 3%. Some would have more. And Todd, we had talked about compression issues. They've attempted to address compression issues with
Police sergeants and the WPPA contract.
I do see then, to follow that up with that, an officer at 10 years by 2026 will be making $36.75. It's highly likely with the sergeant's rate of pay from 31.27 to 40.21. It's very possible that a manager could be making less than somebody who he's supervising. It's possible.
Again, there is a possibility for that, but
How do we rectify that and make it fair?
well, I guess I would say that it's a challenge for several of our positions. You could still have folks that are in a management position that might have somebody with more longevity. I guess to make it, you'd have to push it up. But at the same time, though, you're pushing into lieutenants, and then you're pushing into a chief of police, and you're pushing on all these things. And you're also kind of, though, anticipating and hoping that you have folks that are here with 10 years, when we know kind of on a national average that our retention rate is probably more to 6. And having just went through the WPPA contract right now, our average median longevity with our law enforcement officers, I think, was like 5.5 or so. It was less than what we anticipate. So yes, it can happen. It's not going to solve 100% proof on it, but in my opinion, it does make it better. It gives us some more breathing room.
Okay, Ted, and I would add that one of the advantages we have now is with the addition of Chad to our staff, we never had a human resource director until we added Chad. And Chad, you've been here for 2.5 years. So before that, it was, people were trying to kind of manage that through. Yes, but I think that Chad will be more attentive to that because that's part of his job to kind of keep track of that. So I'm hopeful that we'll see less of that happening. Chad, you have anything to
Yeah,
say to that?
I can add a little bit to that. I think the proposed range for where those sergeants are lying, because that's essentially where that compression is going to lie. I think the current structure is going to give us flexibility more than likely through the entirety of the current collective bargaining agreement that's coming out now. So for the next 3 years, I think we're going to be safe. And we have some flexibility within that. I think at the end of that, then that might be a situation where we would have to maybe adjust those sergeants into a new grade going up, but there's some flexibility in there, and I think we're going to be okay here for the next few years for sure. Because the other thing that we also did with this, the old compensation plan calls for a 7-step system, and the new one, we expanded that out to 11 steps, which gives a little bit more flexibility on the high end of it as well. So I think that's going to play into that, flexibility for us the next few years.
Do you have any numbers as to how people actually compare? I mean, we see these grades, we see these steps, but do you have actual examples where a senior officer and what he makes per hour versus what a sergeant makes? And then a senior officer who's an OIC that collects an extra $1 an hour. I believe you also have an issue going on with health insurance where the sergeants are charged another 2% a year for health insurance versus the officers. And I'm not saying, again, this problem started in 2010 with Act 10. And I understand that everybody since then has been trying to figure something out. So don't take it personal. It's a mess, but it's a mess that at some point we have to rectify. And the people in 2010, if you ask me, certain politicians needed scapegoats for a poor economy. And they leveled the public employee as that scapegoat that year, and that was popular. We've seen that done in past historical census with leaders of countries also. But what I'm saying is that at some point we have to rectify this. At some year.
I believe Chief McKinley had a few comments he wanted to make.
2010 made it, kind of brought it to a head, you're right. But I remember fighting this fight back in the early 2000s and getting rid of some historical documentation. 1996, compression was an issue, and it's not limited to Platteville. I mean, is it something we need to improve, and we're working on that? Yes, but it's a problem. I mean, I've talked to other chiefs about it, and they complain as well. So I mean, it's something that is across the field, and I really believe that what we have set in motion here begins the process of improving it.
We have one last comment. I would assume, I haven't been here very long, but I would assume if we had a situation where we're posting for an open sergeant vacancy and we have some very accomplished and shining stars that are passing over on that position because of compensation and benefits, that Chief and HR Manager Wilson would be bringing it to my attention probably very quickly.
Very well. Thank you.
Okay. So as Clint has noted, this will be adopted during our budget adoption.
That is correct.
Which is the second meeting in November.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, the next item then on our agenda is employee benefit package. And now Chad gets to talk.
I do.
And we have something on our screens.
Okay, so I took a little bit of time the last couple of weeks to just take a look at some of our competitor comparison that was requested by a couple of members of the council, just to kind of make sure that we're aligned and with, you know, kind of our direct competitors on a total compensation standpoint. And obviously, you know, step one of that is aligning our actual compensation plan from a wages standpoint. So that's step one of that. The other part of it is aligning that kind of that fringe benefit side of it as well. And with that, I really just wanted to kind of compare those things that we offer here from the city. So those items that the city sponsors, therefore the city has some sort of a budget hit for that to provide for those staff. So what we offer here, health insurance, we're on currently an 88-12 split. So the employer share is 88% of health insurance premiums. That is 90-10 for the WPPA members. Dental is there. Dental, I'll just say, is going to be kind of standard across the board, no matter where you go. It's not a huge benefit. So there's not going to be a huge impact in there. But we do also offer term life insurance. That's through the State Group Life Insurance Program, long-term disability, and then obviously our leave benefits. So I wanted to look at some of our direct competitors, one of them being the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. So they are obviously the largest employer in this region. So I took a look at that, and just looking at the items that they offer that we also do, this is going to give you a little bit of a visual of what that looks like. Now, keep in mind that UW-Platteville also has a choice option. So because they are part of the through ETF, the Department of Employee Trust Funds, they have multiple health insurance options. So they get to choose between, you know, 20 different carriers or whatever it is. These numbers here are if you were to select the same health insurance carrier that we have, which is Quartz. So this is the comparable for that. So with our 88-12 split, you know, we're looking at, it's costing the city $1,943.75 a month, where on the UW side, it would be $1,938.56. Again, they do have multiple options. So that's a variable rate essentially. Where that comes with the deductible though, so we have an HRA in place. So the plan deductible is mostly covered by the city. So the HRA covers 2,400 of the deductible for the employee. The employee is only on the hook for $300 or $600 of that deductible for us. Now that's 300 per person or 600 max for the family. And that is actually the max out of pocket for city staff as well. And then the city could be liable for up to 3,600. So on the state side, the UW-Platteville side, that changes where there is no HRA or HSA for that matter. That's going to be included in that. So the employee there is going to be liable for 500 for them, but then they're also going to have a max out of pocket of 2,500. So while the premium is, you know, pretty comparable, you know, it still kind of gives us a little bit of an edge as far as what we're offering on that side of it. Dental, again, is not a huge impact or difference across the board here. You got to also keep in mind that the UW-Platteville also has an option to choose health insurance with or without dental. And so basically what I did here, I just kind of took the difference of what that would look like. And those are the numbers you're coming out with there. Pretty similar across, you know, with everything else on the dental side. So life insurance, again, State Group Life, where the city actually picks up 1 unit of that. And what I mean by 1 unit, that's equivalent to basically 1 times your annual wage. Okay. The rate on that is dependent on your salary and also your age. So it's hard to put a dollar amount on that. So we do cover that. The city, the employees also then have an option to select, you know, supplemental and then up to 3 additional units of additional life insurance. On UWP side, that is fully paid by the employee. You also got to keep in mind though, that at the university, they have multiple life insurance options. It's not just state group life. There are a number of other options there that they can get into as well. From a long-term disability insurance standpoint, we do offer that to our staff and we pay for that. On, their end, there's what's called income continuation insurance. That is fully paid by the employee. There's multiple options on that as far as, it could be the elimination period or whatever it is, that's going to change those rates. So it's kind of hard to put a dollar amount on that. And then going from there, I wanted to look at how we stack up on the leave benefit side of things. So this is on the left, you're going to see we have a non-exempt and exempt schedule that is mirrored kind of to what UWP has. That's more of a UW system policy, not just the Platteville institution. So you can kind of see the differences there. Now, keep in mind that we just rolled ours out 2 years ago after I came on board here. And this was one of the initiatives, was to try to mirror one of our direct competitors, just because I did come over from that system. And, our old leave structure only had one, there was no difference between exempt, non-exempt. So you basically came in with 2 weeks, years 1 through 6. It was 3 weeks in years 7 through 13, et cetera, et cetera. So we tried to kind of mirror that a little bit and give a little bit of an adjustment for our exempt salary staff as well. So that there is fairly competitive and comparable. Sick leave is pretty similar, but it does, the difference is that UWP and for UW system, that's a state agency, there is no cap on your sick leave there. And you can actually utilize that to pay for health insurance premiums upon retirement. So it's really hard. It's not really apples for apples there. Where, we're going to get that 96 hours a year and earn that, but we're going to cap it at 480. But then we also pay that out. As long as you're employed here for 7 years, whether you resign or retire, it doesn't make a difference. You're going to get that paid out for the entirety of that 480, if that's where you're at. So, and the floating holiday, which what they call personal holiday, we offer 4 days now. That used to be 2 days at 16 hours. And that was another thing that we updated in the last couple of years as well, to kind of mirror, what the state system is doing there. So, and they offer 4.5 days at 36 hours. So, so that's UWP. And then I also took a look at Grant County. Similar there, their premiums are somewhat similar. But their structure is different, where they're going to have a maximum liability for their staff of $1,000, but the county is actually picking up $9,000 of their max liability for that plan. They do not supplement the dental insurance. That's 100% paid by the employee. They have a couple of different options on the life insurance than what we do, but they do offer it. Long-term disability, again, is not paid for or it is paid for by the employer, just like it is here. From a leave benefit standpoint, they have a very different schedule. This is kind of what ours used to look like in a way, just a little bit different on the accumulators in what years you're getting those. So you can kind of see what that looks like there. Similar on the sick leave, but while they have a larger cap of 960 hours, the payout is only 45%. And that's at retirement only. And then they also offer 24 hours of what they call discretionary days over there. So what that means, I guess, is, are we comparable or competitive? I would say, yes, we absolutely are. The problem is there are a number of factors to consider in that. So we don't know exactly what those plan designs are. We don't know the general levels of coverage. So we don't know if, with UWP, you have multiple carrier options. We don't. We only have one. So there's kind of a difference there. If you look at other municipalities or other competitors, do they have a standard deductible or do they have a high deductible, which is going to impact the premiums that they pay? Again, I said coverages. Then you also have to look at the options for the HRA, the FSA, the HSAs that are out there as well. Some employers are offering, high deductible plans, but then they're putting in dollars towards an HSA, which is a huge benefit because you can carry those dollars forever. where we're offering an HRA, which is very, very nice, where some don't. And all of that impacts kind of that total compensation. But the other thing that you got to look at too is, you know, what has been historically their loss ratios. So when they're paying a certain premium, we don't know what their loss ratio on that is, meaning if they've had a number of individuals that have had, let's say, you know, cancer diagnosis or whatever it is that have racked up those costs for those insurance carriers, they're going to raise those premiums. We don't know what that looks like for anybody but ours. So it's kind of, you can't really look at it apples to apples is kind of my point. You can look at it from a 10,000 foot level, but which I would say we're definitely competitive. I think we're ahead in some areas, definitely the leave. I think we're doing really, really good there. The other thing that you got to look at too is what I'm hearing from Tricor anyway, is that most employers are looking at about a 20% increase in health insurance this year. I had one set up here for Lancaster, and those rates were kind of blowing us out of the water. And he said, well, yeah, but you got to consider that we're getting a 19.6% increase to our premiums this year. So what that is even going to look like, it's hard to say.
And ours was
5.9 is what we got that at. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then again, you know, you have your supplemental benefit options. There's so many different factors. It is really difficult to do an apples for apples is kind of my point. So, I would say we're competitive, but it's kind of subjective.
So questions? Anybody with questions? Otherwise, Chad, thank you very much for.
Actually, Chad, I have one question. Is cost like the reason that you're not able to offer multiple carriers, or how does that work?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, when you all, so when we got quotes before, we had them look at medical associates. We used to have an option with medical associates that was part of Unity, which is now Quartz. And with that, though, there's a number of different factors with that. For one, with medical associates, they wanted a 50% enrollment of our population, which was probably not attainable just because of the options that you have for locations for care and whatnot. When you do go to multiple options, yes, it absolutely does increase your premiums. There are some other factors in there too. Cost is I would say it's a big one. We did explore a little bit of an option of going back under ETF and going that route, which we couldn't really find the savings, to be honest. And there's a long vetting process into that. And there's an application fee. I mean, it's going to cost you about $3,000 just to explore that option. They don't have to accept you, more than likely they would, but at the end of the day, when we're looking at the comparables, it didn't really make sense where it was going to save us anything to go through that. So.
Nothing. Thank you for your time.
Lynn? Ken?
No question.
All right, then thank you again, Chad. We will then go to the next information and discussion item. This is the snow and ice removal contract 9-23. Howard.
Yes, thank you. Every year we put out a contract so that if property owners who have public sidewalks abutting their property, if they fail to shovel their sidewalks, we can have the snow and ice removed and the cost plus an administrative fee billed to the owner. We send out bid requests to local contractors, and this time around we did not receive any bids. This has happened in the past, and so our intention here is that it will be done either by the Parks Division or Streets as resources will allow. Our priorities will always remain to clear roads, alleys, parking lots, the city-owned sidewalks, and the snow from the downtown area. it takes about 3 days to complete. With the timelines outlined in the ordinance, if city staff is doing this snow removal, it will delay it from the ordinance, but as I said, we've done it in the past. Our fee structure would be the same as we use for grass mowing, 55 minimum, $55 per hour of work if it needs to take that long, plus a $50 administrative fee. So that'd be $105 minimum for clearing a sidewalk if somebody does not do so themselves. The only other option would be to try to rebid it, see if anybody else comes in, but I don't see that happening at this point. So I just recommend we go with it.
Howard, what are the requirements for, like that you need in order to have the contract? Do you have to have like a business, or like can somebody that has a snowblower just be like, hey, I'll do this for you? And
We need to have them have a minimum amount of insurance and those sorts of things. We ask for references, I mean, we just don't want, Howard with a shovel going out there and trying to shovel 50 sidewalks kind of a thing. We want somebody who's got people and equipment, and they need to at least be able to show that they have the capacity to make this happen.
Okay.
Question for you, Howard. Every year it comes up along Madison Street, particularly the areas that are east of Grace Street all the way to Lutheran, where the sidewalk is adjacent to the roadway, and the people that live along that area end up having snow plows plow an enormous amount of snow directly onto the sidewalk itself, and those people not being capable with some storms of removing that snow. Have we in the past at all, has the city assisted those citizens who have that particular problem, or what has been done, or what, is there any plan at all to help them, I guess?
We have not done so. That's not the only location in the city that has sidewalks that are adjacent to the curb. There are many areas in the university area and other areas, and it is very unfortunate. But what we try to do is we try to explain to people to wait until the snow plowing is done before going out there and doing it. I understand it's going to be a lot of heavy snow and possibly ice in many cases, but it's not fair for the city to try to go back and do snow removal on certain sidewalks and not others. And it certainly isn't fair to the traveling public for us to artificially narrow the streets by not plowing all the way to the curb, because once that starts, it continues. Because, the first snowfall, you might get, 3 or 4 inches away from the curb. And if you continue, by the end of the winter, you're a foot and a half. So if we start at a couple of feet from the curb, you're going to be impacting the travel lanes.
And I think I understand that. Ultimately those citizens get up about 3 a.m. They come down and they look at the resources that are used to remove snow from the downtown, and they see that as a little unfair also. So that's, just the other side of the coin. And I know people are going to complain about it this year. That's why I want to get ahead of that and talk to you about it now.
So Howard, you mentioned the sidewalks at the university that are next to the curb, but isn't it true that the university does its plowing on it? I mean, our relationship with the university means that they're doing the plowing on on those streets. So that's not really our job anymore.
True. What my intent was to say that in neighborhoods near the university, you get places like Division Street and some of the other streets that are near the university. I'm just giving that as an example, in addition to the one on Madison Street that Alderman Casper just mentioned. There's plenty of others, Chestnut Street, Division Street. There's all sorts of Washington Street. There's tons of them. I just wanted to make the comparison that there's these situations in more areas of the city.
It would be interesting to know how many areas, but I agree, Todd, that there are some sidewalks there, particularly on Madison Street, that's plowed so early in the morning to accommodate the buses and things. And, it seems like that's also a route that students might walk to get to school, whereas there may be other places that aren't quite as trafficked.
Particularly in the roundabout areas and those
Yeah.
areas.
Well, I'm
shortly.
assuming we removed the snow in the roundabout area off the sidewalks.
The abutting owners do, the city owns property abutting in certain areas around that roundabout. So we do some of that, but for like the stop and go gas station, that would be done by them. And the school district does their quadrant, but the city has some property that we own in the other quadrants, and we would be doing those. It's up to the council. If that's what you desire, we can look at what what it would take for the city staff to do stuff like that. And then you would have to make a decision as whether or not that's fiscally and
Yep.
all appropriate.
Ken, did you have a question?
I have a question. Who's gonna do the checking of the streets as far as removal of snow and ice? Is that all gonna be done by the code enforcement officer for the
Correct.
whole city?
Correct.
That person will be responsible for covering the whole city.
Yes,
That
That-
one person.
that person did it last year too. I don't know that there was any issues or problems.
I'm just checking as to what's will be happening.
Howard, I do have a question about hiring part-time staff. Have we ever considered rather than our water or our own staff, have we ever considered the option of finding, I see this posted all the time, Joe and Todd will come, call them, they'll come, shovel your walk or whatever. So my question is, have we ever explored the option of some part-time folks, whether they be young folks or middle-aged folks or
I don't
folks?
recall us doing that. I would have to discuss that with the city manager and our HR person.
Yeah, I understand that to me, in some ways, it's like lifeguards at the pool. It's like, our summer seasonal staff in the parks to mow the yard, so the question is, and I know we don't have a lot of winter seasonal staff, but is that something that we should be exploring? Since this is the second year in a row, we haven't gotten a bid back on this, and maybe it's going to be like NOAA is predicting, maybe we're going to have a warmer than normal winter and we aren't going to have any snow, but maybe we should explore some of these other options in terms of seasonal staff.
I will discuss it with city manager and our HR manager.
Might not be for this year, but it's a possibility. Okay, anybody else with questions?
I guess
Okay,
my only concern is we had a couple of snowfalls last year that were extreme in terms of weight. And a large plow truck can plow in my very small driveway, and it challenges me with the best of snow blowers. And I think still a rather healthy back to move that snow. So my concern is just for those people that end up with, 100 feet of that kind of situation adjacent to the roadway. Because I don't know how you'd ever cope with something like that other than to wait for the snow plow and get out there immediately and try to get it before it froze. Because I don't know what you do when some of those 300-pound chunks of snow freeze. So that's what I brought. That's why I brought that up, I guess, ultimately. And in the past, doing a job I did where we would go and ultimately we'd have elderly people that would collapse from health conditions while trying to shovel it. I mean, that's occurred many times also. So that was my only concern. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I think we've warmed enough to the snow and ice that we probably should move on in our agenda to potential 2024 budget items as requested by Alderman Killian, Joe and Howard. Joe, I guess we'll start with you.
I have a question of Joe. Did you receive copies of about a 3-page document this afternoon? This came from Gary Prohaska, and Gary has COVID, so he's not here tonight.
Yes, I did receive that.
And I believe all council members
Did all
received
the
it
council
too.
members
Yep.
receive a copy?
I
Everybody
did.
has a copy?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, all I did in the report was just provide some information on that budget item for the Historic Preservation Commission. Basically past practice and budget amount for that item. And basically my reason for doing that is just to indicate that there has never been a demand for a large budget amount in that category.
Except for the 1 year when the WAHPC had their conference here.
Right.
And we allocated $1,000 during that 1 year in 2018.
Which was not fully utilized either.
So I'd like to speak to this some. First of all, the one thing I didn't see that Gary, he didn't include here was anything as far as signage. I know you people must travel to Mineral Point, travel to Galena, travel to Dubuque. And so those cities do have signage. And so we are in need of signage to be put up here in the city of Platteville, and the signage costs money. So this is one of the reasons for increased budget, and this is not listed here, but is a part of our increase that we want. So that's one item. And the second thing is basically what Gary has given out, and that's training for the people that sign up and work on HPC, and that they need to be proficient in what they are doing. And that is what is put out here in the document from Gary Prohaska. And so you can read that over for next time. This is coming back, I assume, next week. So that when you look at this listing of years as far as budget, it's not really given a true picture as far as needs. So there are needs here, and just because we only get $250, that doesn't mean that our needs are met. So that is program that needs to be increased, and so that's my comment and comments about this. So this is coming back next week. So
It would have to be added as a budget amendment to the budget. That would be in the November meeting. Is that the second meeting in November?
Correct.
It would not come back at the next meeting. If this is to be added to the budget, it would have to be offered as an amendment to the budget because the budget's been presented. So it would have to be offered as an amendment. It would have to be seconded, and then it would have to be added to the budget.
And this would be at,
The
What
second
date?
meeting in November,
and what's the day of that?
must be about the 22nd. I don't know,
The 28th.
28th,
or
isn't it?
28th. That's the second meeting. So it's after Thanksgiving this time.
Yep.
I was gonna ask the city manager, you do provide training and pay expenses for that for city staff such as Joe Carroll and Rick Reniker when they need training to accomplish their jobs, correct?
Would have to defer to Joe's budget to speak on the specifics of it. I know that we are engaged in training with expenses and per diems, but
We do have other line item budgets for training and conferences. It's not a lot of money, but most of it is for Rick in particular has a lot of continuing education requirements for his inspection certifications.
Ken, you're hoping to develop and educate and train a group of appointees on a commission to accomplish what then at that point? You say you want to make people proficient. What are you making them proficient to do?
This is provided for your information so that you're prepared for the meeting the 28th.
And I had another question. I looked at the previous, I guess, $500, and I excluded 2018 when the budget was $1,000. And the total amount spent by HPC was only 2,300
But there,
10 years, so it was averaging around $237.
but there are programs that we should be doing, especially signage and also training of the people on the commission as well. So those are new things that we want to get additional funding for.
I personally believe that if you, if those are things that need to be done, then they need to come through a staff budget. I don't see that we have commission. I mean, we have a plan commission that could have training. We have a police and fire commission that needs training. We have a public housing authority commission that needs training. I believe that those training sessions should come up through a discussion with the staff liaison that's to those committees that are forwarding those. I mean, there's no budget presented with this. So there's a request for money, but
I was just gonna say, I wonder if it would be helpful to have some of those expenses laid out in terms of like, okay, signage that you're wanting to do, what does that look like in terms of a number, trainings, all of that. Like, I wonder if that might be helpful to have that when we're kind of making this decision.
or since the budget's together, maybe that's an initiative that the HPC ought to take up in this coming year. If they believe that there's signage, I don't know what signage we're talking. I mean, we need all kinds of signage in town, so I don't know what signage.
I think if you're driving north on Water Street, when this meeting's done, turn on your brights for a second when no other cars are traveling south. And you'll see a large reflection of signage going all the way up the street for about 1.5 miles. And then start counting them. I think we got an awful lot of signs. A lot of signs that tell us about a lot of things. But I understand some historical things identified, I get it. But end result and a plan as to what the money is going to be spent for and what we are going to receive from it. Otherwise, I have a professional staff over there. And the professional staff has served us a long time. So that's, I guess, my only point in this. Thanks.
Okay, any other
Well,
issues about HPC? Otherwise, I'm going to call on Howard. Okay, Howard, the second item was a budget increase for a crosswalk.
Yes. I have a bunch of different options listed here, regarding this. Basically in option 1, a plane crossing with accessible ramps on both sides of East Mineral Street, minimal changes to the existing sidewalk or street, basically just to blend in. plain unlit pedestrian crossing signs, no parking signs for appropriate sight distance, paint for crosswalks, yellow curb. Budget cost around $10,000, not fully ADA compliant. Option 2, we could upgrade the pedestrian crossing signs to the 24/7 flashing lights like the ones on Pine Street by Piggly Wiggly. Still would not be fully ADA compliant. A budget cost of about $15,000.
So just a minute, is that 15 plus 10, so 25? No, that's,
No,
so the flashing lights are about 5.
adding 5, yes.
Okay.
These are cumulative, these are not additive, these are, yeah. Option 3 would be to upgrade the signs to what we call the rapid rectangular flashing beacon. Those are like the one on Business 151 at the Chamber of Commerce. There's also some of them over at the university in different locations. We're looking at costs around 50,000. And then option 4 would be basically a full reconstruction of Mineral Street to make sure that we have a fully compliant mid-block crossing for a lot more money. So we're also in the middle of the review with the Southwest Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. And I would suggest that we allow them to finish their plan review and identify priorities for sidewalks, crossings, and everything else before we decide that this one ought to be the one that we fund. There may be other ones that are identified that are even higher priority. I don't know that yet. I know that we've had many people, come in to Safe Routes Committee and other places requesting this, but that would also be a budget amendment item for discussion in November 28th.
Okay, questions?
Okay.
Just a minute, Bob has a question first.
Just a question, Howard, with the Southwest Regional Planning Commission's report that's due in March, correct?
That's their current timeline, yes.
Okay, let's say it happens in March, then based on the recommendation, we'd still have to make a decision if we're going to accept the recommendation and then of it. And so the implementation could still be, say, a year out or so. Is that correct?
Possibly. I mean, for something as simple as like an option 1, it could still be done after that. It would have to be a budget amendment after the fact in March, but those are done. But those could be done also.
Budget amendment could be made in March still for the 2024 calendar year projects.
We would have to identify where that money would come from, whether it comes from general fund reserve or out of a different project or something like that.
Bob, would you also ask you were up there today, and what did you see on the side, on Jenner Towers side?
I just saw that the sidewalk was pretty rough and I wouldn't want to try to navigate it with a walker.
You said there were X's on,
There were some X's on 3 of the concrete sections of the sidewalk on the tower side, on the downhill from their driveway. And it also looked like, as far as parking goes, eliminating parking, there was a parking section on each side that would hold 2 vehicles. That would be sufficient as far as visibility goes for someone coming up the hill. I was there were 2 pickups, and had someone been in a wheelchair, they would have been mowing.
Understand. The intent would be to identify the proper site distance for the speeds involved. Standard engineering practice says 150 feet for up to 25 miles per hour. So that would be included as part of this to make the proper adjustments to parking, yellow curbs and the sort of thing.
But
Section of no parking right behind that. I think there was a driveway or something.
Ken, oh, you have.
Yeah, the one thing that stands out to me is that option 1 and 2 wouldn't be ADA compliance. With that, does that pose any risk to the city then if we do a project that isn't fully ADA compliant?
Someone would have the ability to sue the city, and I don't know, I would have to defer to our legal counsel at that point.
But makes it non-compliant, the fact that it's the 9-degree slope rather than 2 degrees,
Yeah, 9%, yes.
9.
Ken,
Okay, I've jotted down a few comments. One of them is that the driveway next to the Jenner Towers is sloping, so that the sidewalk there is better for usage than to walk up the street to the corner at Oak Street and go across and come back down and then get into the park. So that you have more hazard walking up the street because it's sloping versus going straight across the street. In other words, changing the slope across the street on each side and then doing it that way versus supposedly following engineering best thinking on this. I don't think it's right to cause the people, handicapped people, to go up a slanting driveway just to go up to the end there at Oak Street, go across and come back down.
Ken,
But
did
you're better off just to go right directly across the street.
did you look at the picture in your,
Yes, I looked at the whole place.
right, and did you see that this is the proposed, it doesn't go up to the end of the street?
No, this is, let me see what you're talking about here. Are you well, let's let me ask the question now, Howard. Are you proposing to cross from Jenner Park? From the Jenner,
I'm saying that options 1 through 4 could be selected by council members. I'm not saying,
but.
I'm not
are you
making a recommendation. I'm just saying
No,
that these are options.
I think the question he is asking is the location that you're proposing at the corner, or is the location you're proposing mid-block?
The proposed location for any one of the 4 options is mid-block.
Block?
Yes.
Okay. So then, at $10,000. Now, going back to the Safe Routes Committee meeting, which is in our council packet, there is a motion here under new business 5, new business, and B CIP 2024. A motion in red, and it says motion is made and seconded to recommend to the Common Council to include 10,000 in the CIP budget for a mid-block pedestrian crossing on East Mineral Street between Jenner Tower and Jenner Tower Park. Motion passed completely, unanimously. So what happened to that?
I can answer that one.
Why wasn't that included?
it's been established and it's in the minutes that they made the recommendation. I would caution on the practice of over investing with your subordinate bodies on honoring every request without question coming forward to you because they're not in charge of the city coffers and all the expenses. I think it's terrifically commendable. They had a good discussion on it and all those types of things. But I would caution on you certainly entertaining recommendations, but on saying that that is the thumb on the scale that pushes everything over the finish line.
And another issue to me is the need. We have a situation of different need here. The people in general are handicapped, and you're asking the people to go up to Oak Street. So now, even though that's not supposedly ADA acceptable, we can go across under option 1. So that's what you're saying. We could use option 1.
Yes,
Mid-block.
Okay.
yes, option 1, mid-block
And that-
crossing, non-ADA compliant, budget amount $10,000.
And so as far as other problems I can think of is one is that people are coming and driving the wrong way on Mineral Street. So how you plan to solve that problem?
I don't know that we can solve the problem of having people drive the wrong way on one-way streets. Because I was sitting in the coffee shop just today when a car came up 4th Street from Main Street going the wrong direction. I think we have many people who
Well,
drive the
but-
wrong direction
but these
on
are-
one-way streets,
these
and
are
that's
peop-
highly unfortunate.
These are people with handicap disability. And not
There is
people
a-
that could very likely get out of the way.
There is a red sign with white lettering saying wrong way directly there by Jenner Towers on East Mineral Street. If a driver is looking as they're approaching Oak Street, they should see that red wrong way sign and make a left or right turn on Oak Street. If they don't, I don't know what else we can do.
Okay, is there's a possibility they might have had too much to drink when it came from 2nd Street and made the wrong turn?
There are many possibilities, sir.
Now that one
I
is
don't
more
know.
possible than a lot of them.
I would expect them to stop then and try to steal the flashing lights at the crossing on their way home, but just what I know from them.
One other issue I know that you haven't brought up, Ken, that is something, I was talking to a person over there today and she was saying a lot of the residents get picked up for appointments and they need to be on the other side to hop in the cars. The park side, the cars going uphill and I asked her, why don't they just wait by that driveway coming through? And she said, sometimes there are cabs waiting there or other vehicles, so their driver can't get through there. So they cross over and wait. And, I know it's a budget thing, but I'm still kind of having a hard time looking at this like other projects, because I know we take a lot of pride in calling ourselves an talk and a lot of publicity about that. And I think this is an opportunity to like show. But it's not like a lot of the other events and projects that have gone on. A lot of those other projects and events, they've got either vocal parents or an active group that are kind of pushing it. And they may have a committee dedicated to fundraising, or they may have some ICI philanthropical group that is in its. This certainly doesn't, and it's not a showy project at all. It's nothing you're ever going to bring your friends and even know Jenner Park really existed. I never drive on that street, and I certainly didn't know about the community garden. And also, it doesn't seem like this is a project where the people affected have a big voice. I mean, they don't have expendable income to project. They aren't that politically active and civically savvy. Letter that was written by a gentleman who's only been in town 2 years. Have a big support group. Probably their biggest advocate is us to do something about it, and sooner rather than later, because people do have a point. Out. I looked at it, and my mom uses the walker, and I really wouldn't want her navigating that street. It'd be really tough. But I also know it's a budget issue, and we have to consider things like. And I don't know if a small $10,000 is not. If the research came back and they were recommending some bigger project, the bigger project will be done. But I didn't know if, there's no reason that we couldn't just see what the Southwest, committee recommends later. Sometimes things might be a good decision to do, even if they're not the most fiscally responsible decision.
Bob, thank you. I do have a concern. Not as much for the crosswalk as I have a concern that when we paint no parking signs for the site distance that's going to be required, that this is going to create a greater problem with the residents than anybody has thought about. Because it's going to take probably at least 4 parking spots. Is that right? Probably more.
Possibly.
So I think somebody ought to go out and mark where that's going to be, because it's one thing to ask for this. It's another thing to understand what the ramification is relative to parking. And I agree. I mean, I have 2 gardens at the community garden. Gary knows that. I've seen people come and go. Yes, there are a lot of trucks that park there. Today, it would have been incredibly difficult because there were 3 tuck pointing trucks parked on the street. I mean, yeah.
I was there at 11:30.
Right.
And, those spots were both taken on both sides.
Right,
Four pickups and cars.
right,
But up the street, there were like 2 spots 50
Right.
feet away. You took a ride on that.
right. And there were, yeah, but it,
I would have had a hard time. I parked up the street.
right. Yeah, no, you wouldn't have had a hard time, but I'm just saying that sometimes we ask for things.
Yeah.
And then when we get them, we were like, well, we didn't know you were going to take those 4 parking spots or those 6 parking spots, whatever it ends up being. So I think I think we need to mark that off, and people need to understand that if we allocate this money, it might be you're losing some stuff you didn't know you were going to lose.
Yeah, it's, I guess you have to.
And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, in order to be transparent about it,
No doubt.
people ought to have an idea of what that implementation would mean.
I mean, people may have to walk a little farther to park.
And I
My
guess-
comment on this is that parking needs to be taken off close to Jenner Towers, because parking there is gonna block being able to see down the street.
Well,
So at least 3 spots
well,
taken off.
option
that-
1 says no parking signs for the site distance, which Howard has said is 150 feet.
They have to be.
That's the recommended
Well,
distance
that's 3
for up,
spots. That's
for up to 25 miles per hour. We would look
So we
at it.
have to Follow that.
We should follow that.
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say that we have to. I'm just saying that we should.
So that would
And-
almost take up all the parking from Mineral up to Jenner Tower.
It's parking on the other side of the
But-
street.
It would
So-
be, there would be most of the parking,
Not from mineral, I'm sorry.
Both sides.
Howard, I meant from water, from Water
Most of the-
Street up to Jenner Tower.
most of the parking would
That's
be
the choice.
eliminated.
Okay.
But that little shack is not there.
Okay, I didn't know if it could be done by just eliminating the two parking spots on each side closest to,
That's her house.
We would look at it,
but
Well, then,
but yes. I mean, it would eliminate most of the parking from Water Street up. There may be one or two close to Water Street that could still be parked. But that would be about it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Will you finish? I'm sorry.
You said it would take up, the sight line would take up most of the parking on East Mineral Street from Jenner Tower to Water Street on both sides of the street. And you have to remove parking on both sides of the street because people cross from Jenner Tower to the park, then they cross from the park back to Jenner Tower.
Right.
So for sight line, you have to remove the parking on both sides of
Right.
the street.
So my dad lives in Jenner Towers. I go to see him every other day. I take him to the grocery store once a week. We have to park where this picture is not current. It's not because I don't know, this red building, I don't know, that's not there. I think
The
that's where.
Kalmbach house, that's gone.
Right, so it doesn't look like it's right. I don't believe that's right. But howsoever, where that yellow line is in this fire hydrant, so right up in here is where we pull into for him to unload his stuff, right? So are we talking about no parking from this yellow, so a continuous of this no parking here where this door is, where they actually come out? Some of them do come out this side door. And then when I pull up sometimes and he's in this undershed with the rest of the people that smoke, he's not smoking, but he's hanging with his people. I pick him up, so there's no parking. So I'm trying to understand, where do we go now?
Where are you gonna park?
To park when I just want to go see my dad? You can't park in the lot because you're not a resident. So when I go to see him, am I gonna just stay at home and walk up the street? Like, are we really considering this for people that use this? I would rather just find out, is this a bunch of people that need like, and another thing I wanted to say was, Lord, I hope I'm not being mean, but the landlord charges for everything. If this is a real problem, right? Why can't we see if he could put in something? And like, I know the streets are probably city streets and all that situation, but if the problem is really that bad, why can't we get him to help pay for that? I'm for this being fixed. I am, whatever. I know the sidewalks are bad. They need to, and I see, you know, what the problem, I see it, but can we find a way that makes Jenner Tower either do something too, or I definitely am not for the parking being, all of that parking spaces being gone. I don't know, guys. I just don't.
So Howard, I think
that
before the next meeting,
Yeah.
we need a better picture. We need markings on the road where the sight lines would be so that there's some understanding of how much parking would be lost. I mean, frankly, we need the whole story. I mean, it's more than a crosswalk.
Right.
Because a crosswalk, then, we already know it's not ADA compliant, but we certainly don't want to make it worse by not including sightlines.
Especially if it's a safety project and we're talking about, oh, can we make adjustments to the sight lines? It's like, well, then are we really serving the safety purpose?
Right.
Understood.
So
Thank
I
you.
think I think you hear that there's some sentiment to try and help correct the situation or improve the situation, but we don't want to improve the situation and make other
create-
changes that make people say, now, why did they do that? I mean, people need to know what the total picture is. It's not just a crosswalk.
Understood. Thank you.
And we can't solve the wrong way on the one-way street. That's just not gonna happen.
I don't know, speed bump. a speed
Yeah,
bump.
I wondered why we didn't consider a speed bump.
One other question I had, and it probably wouldn't apply here because it's a one-way street, and I'm trying to picture it in my head. It's a one lane, one way. Correct.
Yes, because of the,
Right.
because of the,
Because there's-
because parking is allowed on both sides of the street.
Okay.
You
Plus,
know,
it's a narrow street.
So this
it,
would. it
it's a
would
narrow
work.
street and,
Yeah.
and it's the same on the west side of Oak Street as well. You go
Yeah.
past up there, there's parking on both sides when people go to the establishments up there.
My idea wouldn't work, but for other streets and other situations later, I've always wondered I've been in towns, and we may have had these in the past, where in the middle of a two-way street, they'd have a small stop sign in the middle. It's a real stop sign, shaped sign, but it will say, stop for pedestrians and cross. I didn't know if that's something that we've ever considered, or if not because of theft, or if those are even effective, but
There is one wrinkle in what you're saying. Wisconsin law says yield to pedestrians, not stop. I mean, so,
as in Colorado where I saw the.
yeah,
but they were
it depends on,
effective, and
it
people
depends on
knew-
the state law.
People knew the law.
We used to have signs that went out on Main
Right.
Street that were like these little yellow signs that said yield to pedestrians. I don't know whatever happened to those.
They got carried away by the intoxicated people at night.
Oh, is that what happened?
It'd make a nice dorm room decoration.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Actually, they were just too heavy and too awkward for people to carry them very far. So whoever designed them did a wonderful job.
They ended up at the park, huh?
Yeah, they didn't go far.
Okay, so more information on this item at the next meeting, because then we might also, if this is to be a budget item, it would have to be, again, a budget amendment that would be offered at the meeting on November 28th.
Understood. Thank you.
I have a motion that we end the meeting tonight.
Motion is to adjourn.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Jody?
Yep. Gates,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Casper.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.